Good evening. We welcome you to tonight's debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the Political Science Department of the University of Scranton. My name is Patty Fowler, and I'm the League's current president. The Lackawanna League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, which means that we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation by citizens in their government. We encourage you to join the League of Women Voters. Membership information can be found on your program, or you can go to our website, printed in your program at lwvlackawannacounty.org. We are an all-volunteer organization. Please support our work by making a donation on your way out. Donations help us cover costs, including taping, so that debates can be viewed by a wider audience. ECTV is taping tonight's debate. The taped debate will be available on YouTube and via links from our website tomorrow. This is not a live broadcast. However, ECTV will air the program on Comcast 19 local TV. Please check your ECTV schedule. A link can be found in your program. Every candidate here tonight signed a debate agreement that included our audiovisual policy as follows. No part of any authorized or unauthorized recording of this debate may be used or distributed by any person, candidate, campaign, or political group for any purpose whatsoever. You may provide a link to the ECTV LWV video on your campaign website. Unauthorized recording is not allowed. To that end, we ask you to please silence and put away your phones and other devices. Upcoming events. The most important event is Election Day, Tuesday, November 7th. Please don't forget to vote. A sample ballot can be found in Lackawanna County Elections website. Then join us for election returns via live broadcast from ECTV. An interesting discussion about the elections will start prior to the closing of polls. The program host will be Andrea Lorraine. Tonight's debate is between the candidates for Lackawanna County District Attorney. They are Mark Powell and Eugene Tallarico. Our moderator is Dr. Jean Harris, and I will introduce Dr. Jean Harris from the University of Scranton. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. So this program is co-sponsored the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the University of Scranton's Political Science Department. I'll let you know how we're going to proceed tonight. So I will introduce the candidates with a brief bio. Then I will ask the candidates questions, the same questions for both candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. The candidates can ask for 3 opportunities for a rebuttal, and that would be a 30-second rebuttal in response to their opponent. Each candidate will also then be allowed 2 minutes for a closing statement at the end. We ask the audience to stay quiet, silent, don't respond during the debate so we can get through as many questions as possible. But then at the end, after each candidate has given his closing statement, you're welcome to share your responses. We drew straws to decide the order of questioning. Mr. Tallarico will get the first question first, and then Mr. Powell will get the second question first, and we'll rotate from there. We also drew straws for the closing statements. Mr. Tallarico won that one as well, so he will give his closing statement first. So now let me introduce the candidates for Lackawanna County District Attorney. Mark Powell. He graduated from Riverside High School. He earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Villanova University, a Juris Doctorate from Catholic University School of Law, and Temple University Law School, a Master's of Laws in Trial Advocacy with honors. His civic experience includes Music Youth Center, President and member of the Board of Directors, Music Lions Club, past president and 25-year member, Vikings Helping Vikings, board member, former basketball coach for Riverside Freshmen, Riverside Youth Basketball, Taylor Community Center, and Music Youth Center. His professional experience includes Powell Law Firm, attorney at Powell Law Firm since 1990, board certified National Board of Trial Advocacy, criminal trial specialist, board certified National Board of Trial Advocacy, civil trial specialist, past president of Northeastern Pennsylvania Trial Lawyers Association, and recipient of the Lawrence W. Roth Compassion for Victims Award, National Institute of Trial Advocacy, Faculty designation, recipient Daniel G. Grove Highest Teaching Honor Award, Fellow of the National College of Advocacy, Fellow the American College of Board Certified Attorneys, Pennsylvania Disciplinary Board, past hearing committee member, Pennsylvania Bar Association, House of Delegates, Judicial Evaluation Investigative Division, and Lackawanna County Bar Association, past chair, Bench Bar Educational Conference, and Wills for Heroes Committee. Mr. Powell. Mr. Eugene Tallarico, Bachelor of Science in Political Science from the University of Scranton, a JD from Widener University of Law. Civic experience includes a member of the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association Education and Training Committee from 2015 to present, president of Marley's Mission from 2010 until present, and founding board member and treasurer of Marley's Mission. Member, Attorney General's Medical Legal Advisory Board on Child Abuse, Alumni Board of Governors of the University of Scranton, past board member of PA State Public Health Child Death Review Team, a founding member of Lackawanna County Elder Abuse Task Force, member of the Lackawanna County Children Death Row Review Team, treasurer of the Children's Advocacy Center of Northeast Pennsylvania in 1999, member of the Child Abuse Coalition of Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association, 1995 to present, member of the National Adult Protective Services Association, associate member of the American Academy of Forensic Science in 2003-2004, member of the Child Abuse Training Committee for the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association in 2002, and a member of Seniors and Law Enforcement Together, 1998 to 1999. His professional experience includes general counsel for the SCE Environmental Group, 2016 to the present, first assistant district attorney, Lackawanna County District Attorney's Office, 2000 to 2016, special assistant to U.S. Attorney, Middle District of Pennsylvania, 2006 to present, chief prosecutor, Child Abuse and Sexual Assault Unit, Lackawanna County District Attorney's Office, 1994 to 2000. Special Attorney General Office, Special Deputy Attorney General, Office of Attorney General, 1993 to 94. Assistant District Attorney, Lackawanna County DA's Office, 92 to 94. And then Conflict Solicitor for Old Forge Zoning Board, as well as the Conflict Solicitor for Old Forge Borough Council in 1998. That's Mr. Tallarico. So we'll start with the first question, which will go to Mr. Tallarico, and the question is, the gritty reality of being hired by the voters to serve as the district attorney for Lackawanna County is that it will be a difficult job. Why do you want the job? Mr. Tallarico.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you to the league and to each and every one of you who have taken time out of your life. And now that made things much better. Thank you, Mark. My apologies. Thank you all again for being here. The gritty reality of this, of the job of a district attorney is that it is a difficult job. It is a job that allows you and gives you the opportunity and the privilege to see people sometimes in the worst places that their life will take them. It requires compassion. It requires experience. It requires commitment and dedication. I've spent 25 years of my professional career doing just that. Working with victims hand in hand, working with law enforcement agencies, state, federal, and local. The job of a district attorney, in my mind, is far more than simply prosecuting a case. It's the attention paid and the connection made with folks that are hurt. When the case is over, lots of folks think that's when the prosecution ends, but people still need to go on. You need to establish a connection. You need to make sure that you're part of that next step, that healing. In my experience, I've prosecuted 27 murder cases, hundreds of child abuse cases, thousands of cases overall. I've had the opportunity to see people in their darkest days, and from that, I've learned more from them than I think I could ever give them. I've learned about resiliency. I've learned about courage. I've learned about stick-to-itiveness, even when things are very, very difficult. Those things held me in very good stead as a prosecutor for the last 25 years until March of 2016. My hope is the people of this county will entrust me to have the opportunity to do that again. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question to Mr. Powell.
I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate and giving the voters an opportunity to choose the next district attorney. Really, it comes down for me is how can I not? When I see the district attorney's office currently and the problems that have occurred, I'm compelled to make a difference. We have an opioid epidemic that has risen out of control over the last 15 years. And we simply can't afford to be taking the same approach over and over again and expecting a different result. There's got to be a change. There's got to be a new approach. I've heard my opponent talk about his plan, but the reality is, for the last 15 years, he has failed to execute that plan, and people are dying at alarming rates. Our county is 16 out of 66 counties in Pennsylvania. That's unacceptable. I introduced a two-part plan a year ago when I announced to provide help to individuals who are going to make better decisions and choose treatment over jail time. But that's only addressing part of the problem. We need to hit the drug pushers who target our area harder. And we're simply not doing that. We have developed a reputation of being a plea county. And we plea more cases in Lackawanna County than the majority of cases. The state average is 4 times more trials than what we do in Lackawanna County, and they wonder why they're not addressing the problem.
Thank you.
May I take one of my rebuttals,
So a
please?
30-second rebuttal for Mr. Tallarico.
Thank you. Mr. Powell talks about the last 15 or 20 years and the failure to address the opioid problem. That is patently false. I'm proud of the work that has been done by my predecessors, by my former bosses, then District Attorney Mike Brace, Andy Jarbola. We have one of the best treatment court programs in the country here. We have made hundreds and hundreds of drug arrests in the last 2 years. That's the difference that's being made. Of course, we need to work harder. 37% increase in overdose deaths in Pennsylvania last year. There are fresh ideas coming.
Thank you, Mr. Tallarico. Second question, and we'll start with Mr. Powell. Please tell us what you believe is the most important quality for an effective district attorney for Lackawanna County and why that quality is so important.
Mr. Tallarico, you had nothing to do with drug court, nothing. And you have failed to prosecute any actions against the people who are pushing this poison in our county. The most important quality is someone who has good judgment and good skill. I have an advanced degree in trial advocacy beyond law school. I'm board certified as a criminal trial specialist and a civil trial specialist. I've sat in judgment and recommended discipline to lawyers who are crooked. I have a strong, well-rounded foundation to fully address and analyze this problem and not look at it with simply blinders on, doing the same thing while the deaths continue to increase. I am going to look at the pill pushers, the source of the problem. There are some bad doctors out there who are not following the simplest of protocols, and they're simply not being addressed. There are many good doctors out there, and there's a change in the medical society to take simple steps to address this problem more thoroughly. But these things are long overdue. These things could have been implemented many, many years ago, and there are too many lives that have been lost. And you need someone who can not only teach, as I've taught hundreds of lawyers how to try cases, both prosecutors and defenders, in order to build that staff so that the deals do not get better over time and the attorneys are prepared to prosecute cases, you need to prosecute the cases and not plead 99.3% of them away. 4 in 1,000 cases go to jury trial in Lackawanna County. It's unacceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Mr. Tallarico?
Thank you. The intellectual dishonesty, and to be quite frank, the hypocrisy of the answer you just heard, is that for 27 years, Mr. Powell made his living representing those very people that are peddling poison in our community. He made his money from them. He made his money from people who hurt our kids, domestic batterers. That's a real issue. That's a real issue to deal with when it comes to experience. When you spend more than 25 years working on the opposite side of the coin. The question I have for him and for each of you is, when was the epiphany? If you participated in that behavior and participated in representing those folks for as long as you have, when did you realize that it was killing people? When did you realize it was tearing our neighborhoods apart? There are new ideas that need to happen. We need to have plans that are based in education, school-based education, not simply speaking to schools, but going to schools and having curriculum-based, evidence-based education programs. We need to continue and enhance our prevention efforts. Most importantly, we need to do the best ever we've done in the past, is deal with doctors and opioid pills. Does anybody know here how many pills were prescribed in this county last year? 11.4 million. 53 pills per person. We have a serious problem. We have a crisis on our hands, and I've been working in partnership with folks like the Wright Center to talk about establishing best practices and being part of implementing best practices in the medical community and elevating the discourse and the discussion so that we can pare down those numbers of prescriptions and pare down the number of people that we lose every single day. And we absolutely, positively must recognize that we will never cure addiction with incarceration.
Thank you.
I have a rebuttal.
30-second rebuttal from Mr. Powell.
If you were doing your job, I wouldn't have to run for district attorney, Mr. Tallarico. And good prosecutors do protect the Constitution. I guess it's only appropriate for you to lawyer up when you need a lawyer, but it's not okay for everybody else. When you were the focus of a grand jury leak, you lawyered up and hired Jack Breyer. When you were the focus of ethical violations in the Wilding case, you lawyered up and hired a lawyer. So it's okay for you to lawyer up and hire someone, but not anybody else?
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Tallarico. A large component of the district attorney's job is supervision and administration. The district attorney's office has at least 12 units for which the DA is responsible. Please share with us your managerial style and give us a sense of your administrative experience.
Thank you. I will get into that in one quick second. But I will say this, despite the distortions that my opponent just said, I have yet to hear a plan. I have yet to hear one single new idea from him as to how he's going to tackle the opioid crisis. It's very simple to pick up a stone and throw it. It's a completely different equation when you actually have foundation and solutions. As it relates to management of the district attorney's office, for 16 years, about 16 years, I ran the office, and it's a career prosecutor-based office. It's an office that has what's called vertical prosecution, where every case that comes in is assigned to a prosecutor, and they stay with that case from beginning to end. We have a variety of specialty units that I was part of implementing and managing. They are specializations. Specializations because of the complexity of law that they deal with. For example, child abuse, domestic violence, DUI and homicide by vehicle, narcotics offenses. My management style was, and always will be, to be that of a mentor, to be hands-on, to be a partner with the folks that work in the office, both the support staff, the management staff, as well as the assistant district attorneys that work there. It's important that we translate and transition knowledge and experience to folks that come into the office and build them so that they can do better and greater things, and really to do what they're there to do and sworn to do, which is to do justice for the people in this county. The office itself has over 60 people. There are a team of detectives. There are specialized units within the Detective Bureau. There are narcotics detectives. There are detectives that handle generalized criminal investigations, as well as an insurance fraud and an auto theft task force. So there are a variety of different focuses there. And I've spent 16 years managing and navigating each one of those, visioning and applying for grants to allow them to continue and to sustain themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Powell, same question to you.
You know my plan. I've announced it a year ago, and all of a sudden, your plan sounds remarkably similar. It's to hit the drug pushers harder and stop being known as a plea county. And my administrative style is to lead from the front. I'm going to be a district attorney who tries cases, and I'm going to work hard, and that's going to set an example from the top down. I would never ask anyone to do anything that I wasn't prepared to do myself. I've been in a successful private practice for 27 years. I know what it's like to make a payroll. I know what it's like to manage a budget, and I know what it's like to work hard. There are policies in place in that office now that will remain in effect because the policies are working. It's the leadership that's lacking. It's the accountability that's not there. So the policies and procedures of the district attorney's office will be reviewed and tweaked and adjusted over time. But the structure of the office is an office that is structurally sound. It just cries out for new leadership. Because of the Republican primary, the office is divided. To be a true leader, people need to follow. And that will not happen under your administration. I am prepared to do what's necessary in order to restore the reputation of that district attorney's office, to try the right cases, to send the message to criminals that there is certain conduct that will not be tolerated, and the deals will not get better as you get closer to trial, which is currently the complacency that has set in when you were in charge as the first assistant over the last 16 years.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Powell. Do you believe that it is possible for the Lackawanna County District Attorney to fulfill his administrative duties and also serve as chief trial lawyer? Please explain or justify your answer.
I do, and I feel that it's not only possible, it's a necessity. I've managed people in my office. You put policies in place, and it's a matter of enforcing those policies, and you do that by setting an example. If you want people to show up to work early, then I arrive to work earlier than everybody else. If you want to have people work hard, then you work hard. And what that office is lacking currently is true mentorship. There's no program to teach these young district attorneys how to try cases. That's why they're afraid to go to trial and the deals get better. I've been teaching other lawyers how to try cases for 12 years, prosecutors, defenders. We look at cases through the National Institute of Trial Advocacy, and we put lawyers who've been practicing 5, 10, 15 years in a position of taking both sides of an issue. They have to prosecute the same set of facts and defend the same set of facts because that makes them better lawyers. My background as a defense lawyer will make me a better prosecutor. It's the courtroom experience that matters, and I practice in all 6 counties in northeastern Pennsylvania. I know what works, and I know what needs to be fixed here in Lackawanna County. And I will make those adjustments. I will mentor those young attorneys. We will follow those procedures. There will be accountability, because that's how I successfully have managed a private law office, a very efficient private law office, and I will bring that knowledge to the government office.
Thank you. Mr. Tallarico, the same question. Do you believe that it is possible for the Lackawanna County DA to fulfill his administrative duties and also serve as a chief trial lawyer? And please explain or justify your answer.
Yes, I do. I think it's absolutely possible to do, and I think it's essential to do. It's exactly what I've done for 16 years as the first assistant district attorney. I was involved in the day-to-day management of the office, grant management, human resources, as well as the mentorship that my opponent speaks of. I don't know that he spent a great deal of time in a district attorney's office, certainly not in the one in Lackawanna County, but in the time that I was there, I can tell you there were dozens and dozens of young lawyers that were mentored into success. There were dozens that grew into quality, competent, capable attorneys. When you talk about leading from the top and leading by example, an example of leadership is understanding the law and following the law. You may have just seen in the newspaper that my opponent's campaign acknowledged violating the law with their campaign finance regulations. There are letters that went out from the campaign that didn't have the appropriate disclosures on them. It's a violation of the law. It's a misdemeanor. It's a case that would be prosecuted by the district attorney's office or the attorney general's office. The answer to the question is, how did it happen? It was overzealous volunteers. So the question is, where does the buck stop? Does the buck stop with the overzealous volunteer, or does the buck stop with the leader? And when you lead from the top, you take responsibility for it. As a district attorney, it's imperative that you be the chief trial lawyer. As I referenced earlier, I've prosecuted 27 murder cases. In the last 15 or 16 years, several significant, complex homicide cases. It's important, as the district attorney, you are the leader, and you bring with you those in your office to give them the training and the experience to elevate their skills.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Tallarico first. As district attorney, in your office policies and practices, what factors will you take into consideration when deciding to take a case to court or to drop it?
Thank you for the question. The factors, truly they do vary depending on the type of case, but certainly you're bound as a prosecutor by your obligation to be able to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the highest burden the United States has in our civil or criminal justice system, to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And as a prosecutor, it's your obligation to make an assessment and be certain that you can prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. Depending on the type of case that you're addressing, you have different concerns and competing interests. First and foremost, for example, if you're dealing with a case of child abuse, whether it be physical or sexual abuse, there are very significant concerns. We have to make sure that a child has the capacity and the ability to have a voice in court, or are there ways we have the opportunity to present their testimony to lessen the trauma to them in the courtroom. In cases of domestic violence, there are tremendous pushes and pulls and struggles on survivors of domestic violence. There's power and control issues that emanate for most instances for years. And those are all considerations that have to be taken into account when you're making these decisions. Now, I will tell you, from my experience, I have the experience in being able to navigate those difficult issues, to be able to move forward on cases and bring accountability to offenders. Because ultimately, that's what you would want from your prosecutor. You would want your district attorney to have the tools and the techniques and the strategy, not only to keep the person that was harmed safe, but our community safe. That is learned over time. It's something that you train and educate for, and you learn through your life experience. That's something starkly different than my opponent has.
Thank you. The same question for Mr. Powell.
It's a very simple formula. It's the conduct of the defendant and the harm that they caused. The conduct and harm. That's what has to be evaluated. And plea negotiations will occur, but as a prosecutor, you hold the cards and you draw the line in the sand as to what plea negotiations will take place. And then you have to be prepared to go to trial. I will not dispose of a case because someone has an inside track or knows someone in the district attorney's office. I will be independent, and it will be based on those two factors, not the connection someone has. There was a recent videotape from Mr. Gilbride who indicated that Mr. Tallarico told him not to show up for a hearing, but he showed up anyway. And he was told that aggravated assault charges were disposed of with a simple disorderly conduct without his knowledge, when he was told not to even appear. That type of corruption cannot occur. Mr. Tallarico's employer is also someone who has some connection in the district attorney's office, because there were criminal charges against his mother that were never filed with no explanation, even though they were clearly caught on tape. An assault charge of a patient at a nursing home, caught on tape, never filed. That type of corruption must come to an end. And it's not who you know or selective prosecution. It's the conduct and the harm caused. And I will exercise that duty, that obligation, independently on behalf of all the voters of Lackawanna County.
Thank you. This question starts.
If I can rebut, please.
30-second rebuttal, Mr. Tallarico.
I will tell you that what you just heard and saw is exactly what you don't want from a district attorney. Someone that listens to a portion of a story and draws conclusions and speaks them as if they are fact. They are patently false, period.
Thank you. This next question will start with Mr. Powell. As district attorney, in your office policies and practices, what factors will you take into consideration when deciding to take a case to court or to settle it via a plea bargain or plea agreement?
It sounds remarkably similar to the last question.
But this one focuses on going to court versus plea agreement. So
Yeah.
what will your
So-
decision rule be?
So the answer is the same, harm and impact on a victim. There are a lot of numbers as a prosecutor you have to go through, and you have to offer plea bargaining in order not to shut down the court system. Plea bargaining will always be part of our criminal justice system, so please don't misunderstand my explanation. But you can't plea bargain 99.3% of the cases away, 4 times higher than the state average. It's no coincidence that we're the highest plea county and the highest opioid death county. So what I would do is look at those facts. If there's a drug pusher coming into our area, mixing heroin with lethal doses of fentanyl, that case has to be set as an example, and it has to be tried in order to deter all out-of-town drug pushers who come into our area and poison our people. That conduct's not going to be tolerated. And you can't have a mentor's program and teach young attorneys how to try cases when there were only 10 cases tried with over 20 staff members. 10 cases in a 12-month period of time. That's less than 1 case a year by half the staff. You can't have a mentor's program with those statistics, and those statistics are real and accurate, as I stand by my other statements. And I'll show Mr. Tallarico the facts, and let's see where his intellectual deceit lies.
Same question to you, Mr. Tallarico.
Yes, the question was about the factors
The
that go
factors you take
into...
into consideration deciding whether to bring a case to court or to settle it via a plea agreement.
That, again, in that question, you look at it from the standpoint of where my opponent comes from. Where he comes from is a place of working for drug pushers, working for domestic batterers, working for child abusers. So he knows that side of the system well. He certainly does. He certainly knows how to negotiate and be able to get the best deals he can get for people who harm our kids, people who harm our communities, and for people who peddle poison in our communities. There's no question about that, and if that were the job description of the district attorney, he would be supremely qualified in doing so. However, the question was, how do you assess and look at the different factors that come into play for a resolution of a case? That dovetails into some of the things that I talked about before. I've spent a great deal of my career dealing with child abuse cases. Those are the most delicate, the most sensitive, and the most pressure-filled for families and for children. Those cases take a great deal of consideration because not only do you have the facts and circumstances of the case, but you have to address the emotional trauma or harm to the child that may be coming to court. They're real considerations, real considerations. My opponent talks about too many cases being pled. That's a stroke that's painted so broad that he doesn't even conceptually understand the system. He criticizes things and doesn't truly understand them. I will explain to you very briefly, in 30 seconds, a case of a 5-year-old girl who had her home broken into by a stranger and brutally assaulted her, physically and sexually. And in that case, I offered a guilty plea because she didn't have a voice. She couldn't speak about what happened. And the result of that, based upon my experience and my work in the office and my ability to negotiate the best deal to get the highest level of accountability, is that offender served life in prison plus 20 years.
Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Tallarico first. According to a Vera Institute of Justice study, Lackawanna County has one of the highest incarceration rates in Pennsylvania. The proportion of its population that is incarcerated is greater than that of Philly and any county in New York State or the state of New Jersey. In 2014, Lackawanna County's incarceration rate was twice the national rate. Yet, the crime rate in the county is low compared to comparable counties in the state and the country. So knowing that there is a cost to taxpayers for this high incarceration rate and a cost to children, families, and the larger community as well, what will you do as district attorney to address the high incarceration rate in the county?
Thank you for the question. That question actually brings in a couple of different factors. First and foremost, in terms of incarceration rates, one of the things that you see most frequently, and a trend in the criminal justice system, and it's the right trend, it's the appropriate trend, is addressing folks that are struggling with substance abuse and addiction and incarcerating them and simply putting them in prison and hoping that the addiction goes away. It doesn't. We understand that. I think we all have grown through that process together. In our county, we have a very robust, nationally recognized group of problem-solving courts, and that will do much to tackle those issues of leaving the prisons for truly the serious violent offenders and dealing with folks that struggle with mental illness and substance abuse and deal with their issues, both mental health and medical, in a different way. Be able to give them wraparound services as we see now, where not only are you building in accountability for folks, you're helping them, giving them that warm handoff to medical providers and addiction specialists and folks that have the ability to get them programmed and functioning back into society and having the ability to look in the mirror and feel like they have value in their life and they have purpose in their life. Those are very, very critical components to what we're going to do in this county. We're going to continue to do. We've been groundbreaking in the last 20 years in Lackawanna County in terms of how we address some of these issues. We were one of the first counties in the state to have what's called a co-occurring court, which means folks that are struggling with both mental health issues as well as substance abuse or addiction issues. Those folks were always some of the most difficult to handle in the criminal justice system because it didn't work well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Powell, so the question is about the high incarceration rate here in Lackawanna County, knowing that it's a cost to taxpayers. What will you do as district attorney to address the high incarceration rate in the county?
You taking any credit for drug court is like Al Gore taking credit for inventing the internet. I've been to those rallies. I have been with people in recovery. You can ask them who supports their programs and their recovery, because they have not seen you around much. And one of their biggest concerns is that you will retaliate in some fashion against drug court that Judge Baris has created, which is leading the state and nation as a successful program. I will continue to promote drug court for individuals who make the right choices now. It's successful because it has the hammer over their head and accountability if they choose drugs over recovery. I believe in those Bill of Rights. I defend the Constitution in my role. I've never believed in punitive bail. Bail is designed to secure someone's presence. And if someone is in jail pending a trial, when there's an assurance that they will appear for trial, that's just wrong. And when people are nonviolent and can be productive members of the society, I would support any type of work release or home confinement to allow individuals in certain circumstances where they're not a threat to society to continue to work and be a productive member of that society. There are many options available to reduce the jail population, and the jail population should be punitive for individuals whose conduct warrants punishment. And I will continue to support our wonderful recovery community for the choices that they've made. They're amazing success stories. People have been clean and sober for so many years, and I will continue to do whatever I can to support that community.
Thank you. We're going to give some more waters to the candidates as I ask this next question, which will start with Mr. Powell. Studies show racial disparities in drug law enforcement, despite the fact that white people and people of color their use and sale of drugs is at the same rate. What would you do to minimize these disparities in law enforcement? Mr. Powell.
I simply wouldn't discriminate or encourage discrimination. It comes back to that simple formula. It's harm and impact. And if individuals are breaking the law, they need to be held accountable, regardless of their race, regardless of their religious preference, regardless of their sexual preference. And that's something, frankly, I've supported my whole life. I don't judge anybody by their personal decisions as to what sex they like. It's just not anybody's business. I don't judge someone by the color of their skin. And I wouldn't expect law enforcement to do that either. We all have constitutional rights that protect all citizens, and a good prosecutor can protect those constitutional rights and do their job. And I've done that in my role as a criminal defense lawyer. I've helped individuals. I've helped individuals get and obtain recovery. I've frankly told clients, unless you go to rehab, I'm not going to represent you. And we've made great strides in having individuals who have made mistakes turn their life around and make successes out of them. But I've never judged anybody based upon any racial profiling, nor would I expect our good law enforcement here in Lackawanna County and the city of Scranton to do the same. It just won't be tolerated.
Thank you. The same question to Mr. Tallarico.
Would you kindly repeat it?
Sure. Studies show racial disparities in drug law enforcement, despite the fact that white people and people of color use and sell drugs at the same rate. What would you do to minimize these disparities?
That's a great question, and those facts and statistics have been around, and we need to take a real leadership role in that. And how you do that is to have our folks in law enforcement do what they continue to do, understand the folks that are around them. I will not, as district attorney, tolerate discrimination or bias against anyone, regardless of race, gender, creed, color, sexual orientation. There's a purpose for Lady Justice being blind. And it's because justice is meted out based upon facts and circumstances, not upon socioeconomic status, not upon whether you're rich or poor, not upon whether you're Republican or Democrat, or whether you're black or you're white. It's meted out based upon the facts and circumstances of a case. And that's a question of leadership by example. As district attorney, you cannot tolerate that. When you see it, you have to root it out. And that's a commitment you have from me tonight. And that's a commitment that I've maintained throughout my career as a prosecutor. The role of a prosecutor is a significant one. It's a significant one because you're the gatekeeper. And when you see things that are problematic, you must address them. You must enhance the understanding and sensitivity of folks in the criminal justice system. Not exclusively law enforcement, of course, our police for certain, but everyone. All of the folks that work in the criminal justice system have to have a sensitivity and an understanding of equality of people. Thank you.
Thank you.
30-second rebuttal.
Sure, 30-second rebuttal.
Your answer is in direct contradiction as to the way you answer that question at the Keystone Forum, when you were asked specifically about the Arizona sheriff who has a policy of discriminating. And they asked you your position on that. And you gave a remarkably different answer than you give here today. A different answer than President Trump stands for and the Republican Party stands for with the Arizona sheriff. And that's why you were asked that question. That's in direct contradiction to what you said here today.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Tallarico. In recent years, advances in DNA testing have led to freedom for several innocent people who were convicted of crimes and awaiting the death penalty. What safety mechanisms will you put in place to ensure that innocent people are not convicted of death penalty crimes, and how can you balance this with the need to protect the public?
Thank you. That is an excellent question, and that is a question that has been recurring in the criminal justice system. It's bound in competence, in fairness, and the understanding that the role of a prosecutor is to do justice. A prosecutor's job is not to seek vengeance for any one person or any community. It's to do justice. It's to follow the facts and the evidence wherever they may lead, which means you use the best and the brightest, and you encourage people to become the best and the brightest. And when it comes to DNA testing, you utilize the best DNA testing to make certain that the folks that you have, the people that you are attempting to hold accountable for an offense, are the people that are truly responsible for the offense. Over the course of time, we have seen technology grow and grow to the point where the levels of certainty have enhanced themselves tremendously. When I first began as a prosecutor, DNA was something that was nearly unavailable. Over the course of time, the testing has become more sensitive, it has become more discerning, and it has been able to give prosecutors and police and everybody in the criminal justice system a true opportunity to discern whether or not the person that is accused or charged with a crime truly is the one responsible and is connected to the crime. So the safeguards that you need to have in place is first and foremost competence. Secondly, the understanding and the true awareness that your job is to do justice, and it is to mete out justice fairly, using the best tools and techniques that are available, and to always have an open mind as to changes in technology that can better afford facts to make that decision.
Thank you. The same question to you, Mr. Powell?
I guess that's his example of where criminal defense lawyers do a good job protecting individuals' constitutional rights. Clearly, those cases have to be scrutinized. And my experience as a civil prosecutor actually prepares me very well for that. We have experts in every civil case we have. We have multiple experts in most. The reality is, on the criminal side, you rarely deal with experts. Criminal defendants usually can't afford them. Criminal prosecutors use them at trial. And we know how rarely they go to trial in Lackawanna County. So my experience in analyzing expert reports, dealing with experts on a day-to-day basis, honestly, I examine and cross-examine witnesses almost every day of the week. My opponent hasn't had a jury trial in 3 years. Would you go to someone who hasn't had a trial in 3 years? I have that experience from both my criminal trial experience and my civil trial experience to evaluate those expert reports and know what is junk science and know what is accurate science. And I have said this firmly before, that a prosecutor must protect the Constitution in order to do their job effectively. And I would exercise good judgment in prosecuting those cases and evaluating the evidence and evaluating what could be proven or not proven. I would rather lose a case by telling the truth than win a case by dishonest evidence.
Thank you. This next question will start with Mr. Powell. County Commissioner Lorene Cummings recently broached the idea of privatizing the county prison, claiming that the private sector does a better job than government agencies. Do you think that the government function of detaining pretrial and convicted individuals, depriving individuals of their liberty for judicial reasons, do you believe this should be handled by private enterprises? Why or why not?
Well, I certainly believe the prison needs to be managed better. This has been a problem for a lot of years. It's a reoccurring problem. And if these allegations are true, they are completely and utterly unacceptable. The problem we have with our current law is that it requires the district attorney to be on the prison board. That's not something I agree with, but it's also something, if elected, I'd have to follow. It puts the district attorney in a conflict of interest in enforcing laws at the prison. We're trying to work with legislators to change that. It was originally set up to develop policy, but those policies are in place. They're just not being followed, and they haven't been followed for many, many years. You know, I'm not a county commissioner or a legislator. I'd be very concerned with the general principle of selling assets. I would much rather our government run more efficiently, run like a private business would run a government business. Bring that accountability into the government life. And I think if the county runs the prison correctly, they can correct the tragedies that have occurred over the years, over the past 2 decades over there. So, as a general principle, I'm not for privatization. I'm for getting good people in government who have private business experience in order to run government efficiently, like a private business is run.
Thank you. Mr. Tallarico?
Yes, the question of, I don't know that privatization is the answer to the question. What we do know the answer to the question is the current management of the prison being managed by county government simply doesn't work. A district attorney sitting on the prison board doesn't make sense. District attorneys, commissioners, treasurers of counties don't have any education and training and experience on corrections, on how to run or manage a prison, and it just simply doesn't make sense. Although my opponent said we're working on legislation, I don't know who he was working on with legislation to get the district attorney off of the prison board and to absolve that conflict. I can tell you, I've spent time when I was the first assistant working with Senator Blake attempting to do that. It wasn't successful because folks across the state had a differing opinion as to whether or not a district attorney should be on a prison board. But I will tell you this, the human tragedy and suffering that occurs at the Lackawanna County Prison must end at some point. We, aside from the human tragedy that exists, The taxpayers of this county are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits. And rightfully so, when it's established that these harms were committed. At some point, we have to decide to get independent folks that have expertise in this area to come in and literally explain how we do a better job in holding folks that work at the Lackawanna County Prison more accountable, and how we do a better job at managing the Lackawanna County Prison. And in closing, as it relates to the previous answer, my opponent talks about being a civil prosecutor. I'm not sure what a civil prosecutor is. It's not a criminal prosecutor, though, and that's what I do know for certain.
Thank you. We're going to move to closing statements at this point. And so Mr. Tallarico will give his first closing statement. He has 2 minutes for that, and then Mr. Powell will follow up. Mr. Tallarico.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, and thank you to the League for hosting this debate. There's stark contrast in this race between the candidates. Despite the fact that you hear words like civil prosecutor and prosecuting civil cases, let's understand one thing. There are two people that sit at this table tonight. One has 25 years worth of experience prosecuting cases in Lackawanna County, and the other has 0. There are two people sitting at this table tonight, and one has prosecuted 27 homicide cases. The other has 0. The question for each and every one of you is, which candidate gives you more comfort and more confidence in keeping our community safe? We talk very heavily tonight about the opioid epidemic, and it is an unbelievable problem. And I will tell you this, many of the things that you heard tonight from my opponent were the antithesis of what a prosecutor would do, because the facts that were spoken are not supported by what Mr. Powell said. We need to tackle head-on the opioid crisis, and we need to tackle it in 3 prongs, with education, prevention, and we need to deal strongly with those who lace fentanyl into bags of heroin, causing and creating more death and destruction for our communities and families. It has been an honor and a privilege to represent the people in Lackawanna County for 25 years. I humbly ask for your support on November 7th, and I thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tallarico. Thank you. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, everyone, for your kind attention to this very important election. We have an opportunity to make history on November 7th and elect new leadership to a district attorney's office that is filled with complacency. There are 2 candidates up here, one who has a 15-year record of doing nothing to address the drug problem, not initiating one crime where someone mixed a lethal dose of fentanyl in heroin. All of a sudden he has a plan, but he cannot get away from his 15-year track record as this has spiraled out of control. And it's no coincidence that it has spiraled out of control and that we're 16 of 66 counties in deaths, when we also have one of the highest pleas across the county. On average, counties prosecute trials 4 times higher than what we do in Lackawanna County. But it's the perception that is the problem. It's the tail wagging the dog. It's the fact that people know this, and they know the deals will get better as they get closer to trial. And they manipulate that system. That has to change. My promise is simple. I will be independent. I will not do away with charges simply because someone knows someone in the prosecutor's office. I will judge someone by the conduct they committed and the harm that they caused. And I will lead from the front, try cases, and mentor young attorneys based on my teaching experience in order to restore the reputation of Lackawanna County. Together we can make
Thank you.
Lackawanna County safer.
Thank you all for attending this evening and for remaining quiet until the end here. Thank you again for sharing the evening, a little bit of your evening with us so you could learn about the district attorney candidates. And please do remember to vote on November 7th. Thank you.